to the Universal Ones Artist Collective. I am your host, Buddy James. Please don't forget to subscribe and like our channel. And always, if you like our content, hit that bell because that's how we get seen. Thank you again. Enjoy the episode. All right, today's episode we have David Schiermeyer. He is just an incredible individual being, and we have a lot of his life philosophies, and he goes deep about some of his personal life. So we don't get too much into the science, but we show some of his science throughout the episode. He's a cymaticist. He does cymatics. He does. You would think he's an electrical engineer by what he does. So without further ado, David Schiermeyer.
You wouldn't need
Absolutely.
months. You wouldn't need years. You would need one day. That's all it would take is one day of everybody on this planet get their head out of their ass and actually realize that they're fucking human species, you know? And once that happens, which probably never going to happen because we have too many perspectives and too many beliefs and too many things to separate us, too many things we like and too many things we dislike. And all those things were given to us to like and dislike and have judgment on it. We've been given a language that separates the ideas from things to allow us to separate ourselves from it with a perspective, giving ourselves a point of view that will allow us to feel something, because in the end, all we are is a species of feeling. All we do is search for feelings. All we do is try to experience feelings. All we ever are doing is feeling and placing judgment on it by what we've been taught. And when the reality is we need to feel everything. We need to feel it all at once. It's not sad. It's not happy. It's not joy. It's not love. Those are all concepts. Energy is energy. It's a singularity in itself that requires only itself, in that sense that you can all do it all at the same time. And when that
I love this. You're literally preaching Buddhism right now.
you know, I'm a lot of things when it comes
You're
to
rolling right through here. I love it. It's like I'm like sitting there going, "Darn it!" I was sitting there. Now he's going on to Buddhism. Not that you, but you. The idea is that first you attack your own beliefs, as you said, destroy those. Then next, recognize what your biases are, the unconscious things, and then realize themselves that words themselves are concepts, and they themselves will hamper you from seeing the truth of things. So you must, at the final stage, think without words. And that is, well, very difficult. That's the nirvana you'll never attain. But in the attempt, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah,
as you
that
did.
is the Zen Buddhist in me that is probably a past life that I experienced, because I didn't study any of that. I just experienced enough things in life to make me realize that I've hated myself so much that, you know, when you get, everyone has gotten to that point to where they don't want to be alive. They don't want to admit that what they're doing to themselves is themselves. You can blame your past. You can blame your parents. You can blame a girlfriend or a boyfriend. You can blame all the people in the world, but only the reality is that you've done it to yourself. Cause and effect to things of how we see things and judge ourselves. That's the reality of how I've done this, what I've done. I've taken function to that level. Like, if I'm going to dismantle language, well, I'm going to dismantle function. I'm going to dismantle what we call it, because I feel like we've thought about it in a way that is not proper, where we're subjecting ourselves to separation once again by categorizing things that are the same, like magnetism and consciousness. To me, there's no difference in magnetism and consciousness. If you needed a force for an idea to be aware, what is the force to be aware? Besides something that exists in all things, besides magnetism. Magnetism on an atomic level is holding things there so frequencies can actually perform an action. So it can actually become reality. It uses the information of already the existence of all the living things that it created to become something. It doesn't say you're going to become a rock and you're going to become a shell. Those things are natural in the sense that that information was already there quantumly because it was required for other processes to be needed for life to flourish. In other words, we need all the things on this planet. Whether we think we do or not, every single microbiology, every single insect, every single tiny little minute atom on this planet is necessary. And they're all aware of what they're necessary for, in the sense that they're not conscious thinking about what they're doing. They're conscious about the intuition of what they already are, and there is no purpose to the sense that I'm only going to be alive this long, so I got to rush and do all these things like humans do. Those things do not have that reality. They only serve the functionality of a bigger picture that we are not grasping. Insects in nature itself, animals, these things fend for life the way life was intended to be for it in the beginning, in the sense that life really is just survival, reproduction, and evolving. Those three things, when you boil it down, are what we're doing constantly. We're giving it perspectives and changing the laws of it by placing that on ourselves. But if we were to stop placing so much on ourselves, we would see that we haven't evolved. We haven't done a lot of survival in that sense anymore. Things are kind of easy, for most people in this world. Not everyone, not everywhere in the world is easy, because we have war-torn countries. We have people that are just dying right now, because of nothing that they believe in. It's what other people believe in, and forcing it right onto their surroundings. So we have that going on this planet. To me, that's absurd. It's absurd that we are human beings treating other human beings like shit, by our own perspectives, our own beliefs, and our own values of those things. And most of it is corporate agenda, unfortunately, all to make $1 off of another person. And in the end, these rich people and rich corporations don't care about money. It's not about money. It's about control. It's always been about control since the very beginning of human beings. In the beginning, control worked. You created great societies. Well, you created great societies with control. You created balance and stability with it. You created a lot of amazing things with it. And then somewhere along the way in the last 1,000 years, we've just let that control us. We do it to ourselves. It's embedded into us to do it. We teach our kids that there's really no way around that sense anymore. We need money. We need to survive. We need to have education to do those things. You have to be part of the system. I used to be an anarchist, a punk rocker. Fuck the government. Fuck all this.
I knew it.
Things, but the reality was having my hair dyed and tattoos and stuff all over me, and all it did was make more people look at me and judge me as I was doing that to myself. In that sense, I wanted to not have an establishment. I don't like the establishment, but yet I'm not doing anything about it except for what I do now. I finally have gotten to the point where now I can change things in the sense that I'm changing other people. And I always tell people, if you don't like the way the system works, which millions of people don't, and this is what blows my mind. We have millions of people that don't like the way the systems work. but yet nobody's going out there and educating themselves and getting involved into the system to change the system within. You know, that's what the mobsters did. That's what the gangsters did. That's what the KKK did. They all understood if you want to implement something, you have to go into the system and change it. Now, so
Those
many
are
people
also
don't like the
highly
system.
motivated people. So,
Well, people have been demotivated because of entertainment. They'd
well,
rather be
and
entertained.
fracturization.
You want to be
And
entertained more than have to do something that is going to involve effort. In other words, entertainment revolves no effort, and it feels good a lot of times.
yeah,
Once again, we're a species of feelings. So take advantage of those feelings is easy. You let people feel good about themselves. You make people feel normal about themselves. Bam, they control themselves. Government has no worries, nothing that they have to deal with besides one or two crazy people out there that go out there and fuck people up. And once that happens, they hush that and put that away, get it all in the limelight and get it all out there, make it all normal, and then they tuck it away.
well,
That's
not
so
to
people.
diminish what you're actually saying in regards to, because a lot of this I do actually recognize, but to turn it to a positive note, one of the things that we noticed about or one of the things that attracted us to the plasma cosmology, electric universe ideas was this change in attitude between disconnectedness of the Big Bang theory, where we are fractured, atomized, separate particles, where everything, and the philosophy, of course, is to continue to fracture and fracture and separate until now we're down to using a gigantic machine that's 17 miles in diameter to fracture atoms into pieces to study particles that come off them or whatever. Whereas I would be more akin to thinking that your ideas of waveforms would be better to examine this with, and what are you actually looking at, and so forth. I mean, you're using electromagnetism to make this do its thing. What is it that you're actually doing? Do you actually know what you're doing? Those type of questions, and not examining some of the assumptions that come with that. For example, people go, well, the universe, blah, 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 and E equals MC squared. And then someone goes, as we've said here, well, what is M? They go, well,
Exactly.
that is mass. What is mass then?
Yeah, because to
And then they
me,
just it
sound
immediately
is mass, light
stops.
is mass. If you can't, if you could see it, feel it, and hear it, or sense it, that's mass to me. Uh,
Well, it certainly has weight, I'll give you that. But the truth of the matter of us seeing that the philosophies have failed us, and far be it also for me to go back prior to that and say, no, 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 the church times with all the burnings and the witches, they were great. No, I don't want to go there either. So you have to recognize that okay, crazy can come in multiple forms, but also having a wonderful time here on Earth and seeing, but also thinking of us always as not even connected to our own sun, not connected to each other. Many people are brought to the electric universe because of that reason, because we are connected. We do not live in an energy deficient universe. We live in an energy rich universe, in a constant state of not exploding yet. That's, I
Well,
mean, to be perfectly fair, but
I like to think about the umbilical. Okay, there's that umbilical connection that everything has. And if you can get into the
I
idea
love
of
Donnie Darko too.
if you can get into the idea of what the umbilical really is, yeah, Donnie Darko, 2001. How do you like that? Same year, same year they pulled the wool over our eyes.
I didn't see that coming. No, what the heck is going on with these snakes going through people's chests? The umbilicals, oh my God. And what's with the rabbit? Anyway, go on. Sorry.
But yeah, that also goes back to the gut and
Yeah.
the fact that the when a CME happens on a coronal mass ejection happens on the sun, our gut bacteria instantaneously reacts. Not 8 minutes later. I mean, our umbilical goes into the sun and beyond. You know, it goes into the power that's powering the sun, which we talk about often on this show. And if Sandro was on, he would talk about where the eyeball is and where the body is of the creature. But he's presenting right now. Kudos, congrats to him up in Seattle.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, you're going to be presenting too as well, David. You're shaking the foundations of creativity and the norms and the status quos, and that's why you get so many views on your videos. Just you're prolific, and I love to. That's why I'm so happy and honored to have you on the show, and to bring you on. You know, I mean, you're just dipping your toes in the water, and you know, sympathetic vibratory physics and Dale Pond. We had him on last year. He was one of the very first guests that I brought on, and I'm like, we got to have him on. So yeah. So, and a good friend of mine, well, we not yet total friends or whatever, but we've talked back and forth now. Jeremy Pfeiffer, he said that him and Edward Grant could come on the show sometime. I'm interested to hear some of their perspectives as well. I know that they're
he's come over here like two or three times now. It's to hang. That's who I was talking about earlier. Like to hang out with somebody like him, and for him to be inspired by my work. I don't know. It's just very honorable, you know, to me. Like I said, I've only been doing this stuff for like 5 years. These people have been doing this their whole lives, you know, and a lot of it is studying in that sense that that they're furthering their careers with their work, you know, like they can take education to another level and apply that into their jobs and change a lot of the reality of those jobs, you know?
Well, I wouldn't knock anyone who is an artist who is stepping into something that they do not understand. I mean, this cymatics, as you may or may not know, has been going on for probably quite some time. Probably way back till God knows how long when I think about it. But one of the things that comes up, and when thinking about what you're doing in vibrating a sphere or vibrating a bubble, well, besides the fact that we're learning more about what the aspects of nature is and the way that these very delicate things can sort of have a magical quality to them that speaks beyond just a piece of art, because you're basically using equipment to do this, obviously, but when I look at, until recently, just basically about, I don't know, a few years ago, they started getting very advanced machines to decode the Antikythera mechanism. However, as much as they did a very, very good job of building a virtual and real reconstruction, prior to that, everything except for the very back part, which was incredibly knowledgeable detail in regards to eclipses, which the artist would have no idea how to interpret. Okay, that information there. The other person who got the closest was simply an instrument repair guy from the middle of Illinois or Philadelphia or something, and he built it by hand, going, how would I build this out of brass with the tools at hand? And he got 90% of the way there with just that. It took the geniuses to translate the rest, because they had to speak Greek, they had to understand the Metonic cycle, they had to understand astronomy, all of this stuff to understand the back part, which he didn't understand. But he's like, I got the rest. I got this part here, nailed it down, all the planets moving and how they did it. You know, even things that you couldn't even understand, like little moving gears. How do you put two gears on the same wheel? Like that type of thing. Figured out that which is basically like putting a differential equation into your formula, which you can't do with gears normally. But whoever invented this thing 2,700 years ago did, you see, and that sort of stuff only comes from the artistry of actually creating and experimenting, even if you don't inherently or immediately understand it. There's still the aspects of truth that others will glean, and that brings us all together.
Yeah,
That's a great
a lot
analogy.
of ancient technology is that way. A lot of those people did not know the true reality of what they were building. Only they were that keys to other moments like now and stuff, to where we use those things and unlock them. Even Tesla, William Reich, to me, those people really understood what they were doing, but at the same time did not understand what they were doing.
Well, it's intuition. The science is in, and they're saying that the highest form of intelligence is intuition now. And Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, I mean Einstein, on and on and on down the row. These are what these great figures have said.
Yeah, I mean,
reach back into your childhood, think like that.
Yeah, I mean, because you really do start
that
to
explains
play
a
around
lot
with the ideas of everything. You really do take things to another level when you reach down inside and let go of who you are and questions that you have, and you don't care about those questions or answers, and you kind of just let intuition take over, like I do, where I may build something and then I'm built it and I'm like, holy crap, why did I waste all my time doing this, in my mind? And then I realized it wasn't really a waste of my time. This was a learning experience to get to this other level that was much easier, that I didn't know about until I did it the hard way. Same thing like with my spinning camera thing. Now that I've got it to work, I realized there was probably a lot of other easier ways to build that. And you don't realize it until you actually start to deal with function itself and the physics of the function. In your mind, things are there and you're like, oh, this is the way this works, because in my mind I can see this working and I can put it together in my mind, and I built it in my mind. So therefore all I got to do is translate this outwards. But a lot of times I'll do that, and then I'm sitting there with this hunk of metal or coil or anything I'm doing, and I'm just thinking, this was not what I thought it would be, like this is not going to do what I wanted to do. So how can I get that to do what I wanted to do if that didn't work? If that's what I thought, but yet that's not really what's happening. And then what happens is all of a sudden I start breaking down processes more and more and more and more and more. And then that's when simplicity comes out. The easy way, when you stop thinking and you just built it real fast, like my plasma gyroscope. Not really anything to that besides what the function is of a Tesla coil, that you put a wire on it and then the wire will spin around in a circle. The plasma gyroscope works exactly like that. It has emitters on each of the rings that allow it to spin. Just like as if this is spinning this way, if I stuck the wire on the top of the Tesla coil, it would spin this way. So you take that spinning concept and you transform it into a ring within a ring within a ring. Now you can have 3 rings spinning around, functioning off of each other's resonation. Now, as an experiment, that is just a conceptual idea of how resonance works. But as a functioning machine, there's much more in my mind that I can't even build, because the technology is so advanced that I don't understand it yet. In other words, there's a lot of things I see in my head and I've built in my head that there's just no way I could ever build that or conceptualize that to be built. Like, where would I start, you know? But then I realize a lot of this of what I understand and what I know through intuition is not my intuition. It's the universal intuition, how we all see something and feel something, how we hear a song and we all can connect to it and be like, that makes me feel really good. And look at a piece of art and say, that makes me feel like this. And everyone's going to feel a little differently about it. But the fact is that they're all feeling. The function is all there. We're just taking perspectives of what it all does. So to take something and just boil it down to its function, and then you take that function and apply it to a device like an engine or a thrusting moment. How would you make plasma thrust with magnetic fields? Well, we've already done this. We've created plasma reactors. We've already created a lot of things with that idea. But yet the technology isn't out there and being built because it's not going to make money. In other words, you build a self-sustaining engine that runs off of plasma resonance and the ionosphere of this planet that doesn't require fuel because you can create hydrogen off of condensation. Once you're up in the atmosphere, you have cold, you have pressure, you have ionization, that's all the fuel you'll need. So you can create off just a little bit of launch, a little bit of fuel, or a little bit of energy down here. Once that momentum is started, you can gather more momentum by adding to the natural resources around that field. So static, resonance, ionosphere, hydrogen as a fuel source from condensation. You only need to take condensation from the outside atmosphere, consolidate that into a hydrogen fuel, and then bam, you send that through a vortex of plasma through magnets. Now you have thrust, and you have infinite amount of thrust because all the fuel you need is recycled within the atmosphere. And once you enter outer space, it's even colder. So the faster you go, the more heat you create, the more condensation you create, the more fuel you'll create. You know, it's a self-sustaining system. But yet we don't take a lot of things and do self-sustaining systems because no money in self-sustaining systems. Free energy isn't just, bam, I got this thing and I'm pulling energy out of the air. Sure, that's because we have thousands of frequencies in the air, radio waves, electromagnetic fields. Sure, you can take all that now. But somebody like Tesla, who was building those things, didn't have electromagnetic fields just floating around. And he only had the natural resources of the ionosphere and understood that you can create things around an equator and send it back to Earth very simply. You would have none of this technology would work in his world. You know, we couldn't have LCD screens and computers that work this way. Everything would have to be built around shielding, because static resonance shorts things out because current's in the air. Everything that we do is solid state. Once you start getting current in the air, it shorts things out. So we have a very primitive sense of technology of what we have today compared to if we took Tesla's things 100, 200 years ago and went with it. Our technology today wouldn't be any of this. We would be using the resonation of the Earth and the ionosphere as current, and all things would be related to that current. So therefore, technology would be a totally different type of technology. This is why you can't just go and start building Tesla coils and setting up power grids that way in today's society. None of the technology would really work in that sense. Not cars, not airplanes, not communications, nothing would work under those senses of how the Tesla coil works and how that energy is produced. You would have to change all of technology. You would have to change everything. And that's just not going to happen on the scale that we've created now. So we have to learn to implement things slowly and change them slowly, as we do ourselves. And that's the same thing. We carry things over from what we do with ourselves into society, into technology, and slowly, little by little, people start to create things and show people that there's better ways of doing things. There's all these things here, but yet these are still the technology that's already been around. This is the stuff that we've already been dealing with. What we need to do is start taking the technology that we have now and integrating loop systems. That's free energy. Free energy isn't just taking energy and making it out of nothing, because that doesn't exist. Energy is everything. You only create free energy by taking energy and sustaining energy. Like I was saying, in a wave coil or an asymmetric pattern that feeds off of each other, where you have a small and a big. Once you have something that is stacked like this is like power cells work when they want to sustain them. And something can be taken from the small part, but the big part is twice as big as this, always resupplying this. And you set up a system that works like a lift and pull, like a wave. And this is what happens. And when we're trying to deal with electronics, we get oscilloscopes and oscillators and stuff, and we start to get currents, and we try to line up the waves. But what we're doing is we're trying to sustain a standing wave. So why aren't we building things like a standing wave? With the concept that that's not line geometry, that's thousands of vortexes. So in order to create a standing, self-sustainable thing, it's not going to look like geometry. It's going to look like a bunch of crazy-ass little coils all over the place that create vortexes, like cymatics. When you understand cymatics and understand sound is two opposing forces creating a lift, the line work is that lift. But that's not a line, that's a curve. And when you start to turn down the light, you see those curves, you see those angles, you see the thrust going from one vortex, pushing through other vortexes, and just the force of those things pushing and pulling. This is sustainable energy. That is how you take and implement a idea from just looking at something and taking its functional value of looking at it and putting it into the functional value of a system now. And you take, this is what ancient people did. They sat around for thousands of years observing the stars, observing this planet grow and flourish and destroy itself by natural cause. They understood how to make a rock because they watched the earth do it. They understood how to use the air and the wind and the sun because they watched the earth do it. All they did is pass information down that was very important as observers. We've lost that sense of observation now, and we've taken advantage of it in that sense where we want an education and we want somebody to give it to us, and we're losing our sense of evolution because of that. We're not evolving ourselves anymore because we're expecting it to be given to us. If 1 million people worked on something versus 10 people, obviously the 1 million people working on something are going to be more efficient and get something done correctly because they have 1 million people working together versus 10 people working together can only get so much done. And that's just reality, and everybody can understand that equation. You know, it's not, that doesn't take rocket science to figure out that if we had all of humanity to change the world, that we couldn't do that, because we could. I don't think rich people or corporate people or any of those people are sitting there going, oh, I just want to fuck with people today. No, they're too busy worrying about making money, and the money is controlling them. They have no control of their lives. That's why most rich people are depressed. That's why most people that have everything don't give a shit about nothing, because they have no value anymore in it. It's all taken advantage of, and we do that with life itself, with the air we breathe.
Can I make a
the
comment?
food we eat. Yeah.
Our entire economic system is based on the concept of scarcity. It's supply and demand requires a need and a willingness to sacrifice to meet a need. You're talking about universality. You're talking about abundance. So the paradigm is really, really, really thin. It's easy to shift, but it's incredibly pervasive. It's everywhere. It's oppression, and it's a shield from the truth and the reality of what the world is really like. If we could stop with the idea that scarcity creates wealth, you know, the Bible.
Like a diamond.
I am an atheist. The Bible talks about mammon. The Bible talks about the golden calf. The Bible talks about worshiping false idols. The very first words of the Bible are, and God spoke, which was an auditory symbol, and let there be light, which is obviously symbolic of light. So these are foundational ideas that have been misinterpreted. I think I have a hard time believing that they haven't been misinterpreted, that we aren't being actively deceived, regardless of whether we are being actively deceived or whether we are just on the wrong path or whatever you want to look at. The unseeing hand is irrelevant. The reality is what you're talking about, which is human beings were meant to think like you do. All of the people I've met since I've joined this little group think somewhat more or less like you do. So there are people who do think and lead, but the universe works by consensus. Ants function by consensus. Birds function by consensus. And they do amazing things. They don't have hierarchical concepts. They don't have concepts of scarcity, of hoarding and then distributing based on personal wealth. These are concepts that are aberrations. They're like warts on the ass of progress, and they need to be clipped off. And I think the reality is that until people like yourself begin to understand that you are literally a part of history and must be preserved and amplified, we're going to have a hard time, because all those people that are watching your videos, they're hungry for the truth. The reason that it doesn't make a shit to you is because you're the technician. And the reason that they love the video is because they're desperately hungry for it.
Yeah.
You are standing on a hill overlooking and giving other people a view. And we can't get enough.
Yeah, you're filling a niche for sure. More than filling a niche.
I'm only fulfilling something that was already there. In other words, everything I've done is something that somebody wanted to be done. In other words, I work for everyone in that sense that I'm creating things not for myself anymore. I'm not trying to look that out of curing depression. I've already cured it. Of course, I feel it still, and I'll go days like I did last week where I got in my car accident from a sneeze. And that really bummed me out. And I placed a lot of judgment on myself for doing that. And it took me a few hours to like step back and be like, there's not a purpose or a meaning behind this. Like some people would think like, well, there's a reason for that. No, to me, there was no reason for it. That's just the chaos of the cycles of balance that teach me lessons that I would like to learn. There's no other reasoning for me to sneeze and crash into a car and destroy my car and somebody else's car. There's no meaning that some child was murdered or treated that way for a lesson to be learned later in life. These are things that we place values on that are what actually control us and that actually create that depression or that fabrication of an emotion. And we're really bound by those things when we start to do those things to ourselves. But for me, I try to let go of a lot of myself. So therefore, I'm thinking about things I feel like everyone's thinking about. I feel like everybody
Right.
wants answers, but the answer is already within something that is not words. And that's why people
Half
connect
the
to
things you
that.
say, I feel like you're reading my mind. And then, honestly, and then the
It's
other
an
half, I
epic.
see someone else commenting that you're quoting, some religion. I mean, you're just tapping into the truth, and your humility is evidence of your reality. And it's, you have a perspective, but what you're doing is you're taking your perspective and universalizing it so that you're trying to look at things from many, many, many perspectives. You're going to fail at that, of course, but the attempt, as so many Eastern religions have taught us, is the point. And so it's
Yes.
I am overwhelmed and thrilled to be a part of listening to what you have to say, and I hardly have words.
Truly, it is.
And I have a
It
lot
has
of
been
fucking
great.
words.
Thank you.
I'm actually
I mean,
very impressed.
I always kind of get very kind of don't understand some of the things that I say or do until afterwards. A lot of things I write, like on Facebook, I have to go reread that. And just like this interview, I'll have to go rewatch it to really kind of comprehend what I was saying or doing. Because like I said, a lot of times I'm just talking blah, 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 blah. The ideas are just kind of like coming in and they're talking to me, but they're not talking to me. They're like talking for everyone, like in the sense like, hold on, Dave, let me take over. I'm gonna like throw down some shit for you and everybody else and just relax.
Julian Jaynes has a theory about that. About the other brain that is inside our heads that we sort of have picking our words and sort of feeling for us or doing the work. But the truth of the matter is that your thoughts are wholesome, that you're trying to consider the whole view. And Mike is right that you will fail at that. But it is the same thing as someone said, let's build a utopia. It goes, we will fail at that. I go, yeah, but imagine how great it will be in the attempt.
Is that even if you built it and you created that utopia, is that really utopia?
No.
Generations and generations of utopia will only become a lazy, degenerate person that doesn't understand any value.
But in a true utopia, then you would find a solution to that problem. A la Starfleet or Star Trek, blah 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 blah. Like I'm not. I wasn't expecting it to be. But it's true. It's sort of like in that same sense. But even that's not perfect. But the original concept was we will relish in the understanding or the new experiences of other species because we've already done it for each other. We love him because of his beliefs. We love, as long as they are the giant non-murderous ones. But besides that, we come together in that sort of sense that we relish the differences in each other and then that we move forward and start doing the same thing out into the universe. We first have to do that with every single thing on the planet before we could reach there. But you're right. We don't have technology to do half of that. But the possibility lies in the future to attempt some sort of rebalancing, but yet at the same time to not stifle any creativity. Now, I'm not going to actually quote Picard, but in First Contact, one of the statements was the economics of the future are somewhat different. We work to better ourselves. Oh my God, I did quote Picard. But
well, utopias are memes. Utopias are ideas and ideals. And unfortunately, what I've noticed is
absolutely you don't have to master ourselves to actually become utopia in a sense, if you know what I mean.
Well, what I'm getting at is rather recently, our utopias have been designed as the 1984 Orwell type of scene.
Dystopia. Yes, and you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. That's
exactly.
that's the scary
But
thing
see,
that you cannot allow
well,
happen. Yeah, you're
this is
absolutely
this is the parallel here.
right.
There's a parallel on the edge of the sword is the parallel, and it is a utopia for 1%. They think it's a utopia. They think that there's a grand high point that they can reach when there isn't. When they get past money and beyond control and beyond all of this, and they're at the top, they think that this is a utopia for them, but then it turns around and becomes the caduceus and the snakehead.
No, you've hit the nail right on the head. That is the fear. However, it is. I mean, I'm just saying the opposite of that, basically, is status quo or degeneration, if you know what I mean, like nothing else matters, nihilism. And I don't think that's appropriate either. Don't get me wrong. I mean, in a philosophical sense, not in an actual ideological sense.
Well, we're right now we're being geared and inched ever so closer towards UFO and UFOlogy. And that is a religion, which is going to be the unifying religion. And I've been talking about this ever since before the show. And it's a design, and it's been a long-term sketch. And this is where we're going. They're coming out and they're saying more people believe in UFOs and aliens and things like that than believe in God. So
Well,
what they're doing
okay,
is
let's admit
to
that's definitely a conspiracy that we can agree to, though. I mean, I can see that.
Whether
and
you
I've heard
like
some
it or
evidence.
not, Neil, these are the facts on trending Google and what we've been looking and most curious
you're
about
absolutely
the past
right.
20 years. We are most interested in the aliens and more intelligent species than us. And
I mean, Zeitgeist had a wonderful
Google's
little thing on that where they talked about what's going to happen when we move into the new age, because the new astrological age is coming up. We're leaving Pisces and entering Aquarius, and I'm sure Jim could give us a giant reason why. But
we're also you got to look at our government right now. It's a technocracy, and we've all moved to China. All right, that's exactly what's happening in the world. So if you understand what a technocracy is, and you understand that we all moved to China, we already left boat. Honestly, you look at the big tech companies, they already left. So, and they're what's controlling the world because it's a panopticon. So, and they've built these cities, utopia-like cities, where they're viewing everybody and doing facial recognition scans and now they can do lasers
not a utopia.
Gait in your walk, and that's a utopia. It's a dystopia for us, but a utopia for them. So that's the double-edged sword.
You're absolutely right. In that, see, I was actually thinking of something like
But
basically like them. No. I apologize. When I was thinking of the dystopia ideal, I was actually thinking a little bit less of a technocracy, although I can admit what you're saying is already going on in China. But what I meant is that, for example, here in Canada, we've neglected our duties with regards to our natives. So Canada's great and all, and we try to be we try to work towards being perfect, and apologizing and trying to make things right. But at the same time, we still ended up screwing up, so best intentions still might not matter for everyone. Utopia doesn't happen. It's a dystopia for people who don't have clean water, for example. That's terrible.
That's the problem with we're living on a planet to where we have billions and billions of people on this planet. And how are we going to serve ourselves without serving anybody else? The perfect utopia would be that everybody has the fact and the capability to have anything and everything that they need. But the problem with that becomes socialism. It becomes a controlled value. What's good, what's right, what's wrong.
Let's not go too deep into the politics of everything here, because I understand that, trust me, we could be on because there's a big understanding or divide between libertarian and socialism and what is a perfect balance. Where can we possibly even come up with an idea of what a utopia would even look like? Every time they said utopia was going to be perfect, it turned into Stalinism or some crazy shit. So
Right.
Paul Potts'
Well,
idea of utopia is not mine. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
if I could just make a comment on that before we pass, and it's not really necessarily political. There is a global agenda, and there are globalists, and there is something called the one, and one. Everybody wants the one. Okay, unification of everything. Now, the unification of gold or currency, the unification of religion, the unification of all of this stuff. So we gotta really be prepared, because sure, it's a great message if everybody's preaching one.
Can I agree with you, but
Hang
disagree at the same time?
Hang on. You can, sure. But there's something that David said earlier, which is we can do this in one day. Yes, it's going to be one day, believe me. And it's happened before. And they never let a good terrorist attack go to waste. So these one days, these never forget, these type of scenarios that are tooled and genetic or tooled and engineered for political gain in any which manner are going to increase, and as well as so everybody's going to be screaming for the one, and the more people that are screaming for the one, the better, because that's what our hearts synchronize as and in. But I'm all for the zero, and I think it's all hollow. The whole universe is hollow. So that's all I have to say.
I was going to, I don't want to feed you, man, because I know that there is a desire to think that, because I think that that's something that David was actually talking about, the way you're feeling, the overall attack, and the fact that I mean, we can admit that there are agendas. It would be silly not to, and that groups have agendas, and that there are lots of groups. And yes, business on the whole is going to want to put a price tag on every single thing on the planet. That's a given. That's a situation we made because of the way that we built the system. But the system can be changed, and we don't have to do that. And we can put limitations on it. This is so the trouble is that you're right, that there is an overwhelming alarming sense that of on the general side, of a PR side, that people, that as a whole, businesses want to have more power because they can do more things. And the trouble is that when they challenge actual countries, because countries have they're people. They're not just something to beat up. You know, it's not something we won against, you know, if some country comes in, we've won against Finland. Dude, you just crushed Finland. Yeah, we won. No, you crushed Finland. You economically collapsed Finland. That's not a win, you know, like on any stretch of the imagination. Like you're a piece of paper with a lot of people working for it. That's a different ball game, you know, like it's like, you know, let's
people use that right now. People use things like that as we look up to people who can collapse societies because their ingenuity.
That's not cool.
It's not cool at all.
Not be looking up to those people.
We honor these people with respect because of their power. So this is all a power game. So you got to remember, if someone knows how to collapse certain societies by just pulling little strings here and there, that's ordo ab chaos. And if you come in, you can do it very easily. If you're a system analysis, or you look at big data, you can see what strings to pull to just or tariffs. You put a tariff here, you put a tariff there, and
no, you're absolutely right. But let me explain the problem with your theory. And I'm not trying to say that, like, because I agree that people would think that way. But they'll do it here, and they'll go, okay, this could work as a strategy here. This could work as a strategy there. Okay, and they've manipulated a few towns. They'll manipulate a few states or provinces inside a country. Sure, that's great. But now they're on the quote unquote international radar for people who are in, let's just say, the intelligence apparatus, and they're going to show up with a gun See, and it's not like, that's different. That's not an economic situation now. That's a I'm bringing the problem directly to your home issue, and that's the influence that those things have. I mean, we all know what happened when terrorists threatened Russia, for example. Like they just, you know, brought them parts of their families and said, "So you want to play this game?" And they were like, "Oh, no, no, actually, I will give you the hostages back." Good call, good call. Like, and I'm not saying that that's moral. I'm just saying that's if you push a country into a corner, they have assets like that. They're not like, I mean, companies might want to play that game, but they might want to remember what they're getting into, you know? So, like, where does your lordship lie, you know, type of thing.
Guys, I've been listening intently. I dropped the call for a second and then got back on, and I, was like blown away because I had the same conversation last night with Michael Armstrong. Same
Really?
conversation.
There you go,
And
Stuart.
yeah, well, Armstrong. It was the way I put it was the same way, but in a different way. That the utopia was supposed to have been created, if you will, but the ball got dropped big time, and we're like the victims of the universe now. We're playing the role of the victim. Even the elitists who, the 1% will say that hoard everything and they have the money or the
But they're doing that out of
resources.
fear.
Yeah, like and then in our belief systems, like you just said about aliens, there's something or somebody more intelligent than you. The creator is more intelligent than me, or the creator is I'm not as good as the creator. I'm an inferior to the creator. When did that idea come about? Well, I would say, at the time of Zoroastrianism, but the pharaohs were pretty cool because they saw themselves not as victims of the universe, but equal. They were in the stories, but then they created the same systems that were based on taxes. You want good water, you have to pay your taxes to live in this town, and it's completely spiraled out of control to where we're just the victims, man. But it should just be done. David's videos are incredible. What he said was just very profound.
Well, Velikovsky would agree on what you're saying right there,
Yeah, man.
because the idea that and not to put words in his mouth, but the idea that you could, they said that in the past that during the Egyptian times that you could not see the future, that they didn't have that ability. They tried to divine what was, and that was something that they lacked. This forethought that we have, this imaginary eye that can move through space and time and imagine a future. They did not have that, but they did have remembrance, and they looked backwards. That future was something you backed into. So they were only able to recognize that they had fallen from grace, or that there was a lost epoch that is the golden age, or whatever we want to say there, and that things were better then, or apparently before the flood or whatever, in regards to that. And I'm not necessarily a believer, but yes, I just said before the flood. So if we move into the ideas of catastrophe after that, and of course the way that people were, in a state of shock and did not have this ability, that it seems that we are talking about three different states of mind that have changed over time, depending on either the events that have transpired on the Earth. I mean, how would you interpret being fired upon by the Death Star, like, for lack of a better term? Like, I mean, it was visualized in Rogue One, the idea of what that might look like, but it does not even really compare. When you think about it, nobody is going to look. That one man might go, you know what? I'm going to stoically decide because I know what's coming, and he could stoically decide, but for theatrical effect. But everyone else, even people who were not near that, the people who survived that, are going to freak out for the end of time. Like, I mean, for the rest of their lives, they're going to be completely scarred by that event. You cannot have that without being thrust into a state of shock that you will never recover from. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe.
I think,
but wow.
I want the utopia. Bring on the utopia. Let's create it. Damn it.
I'm with you there.
That's the way. I mean, I know it's like because the paradigm is jacked up. Look, nature towers down over us. Tornadoes, tsunamis, floods, earthquakes, and we have no control over it, and we're victims of it. Then at the planetary scale, then at the solar system scale, then at the galactic
What if
scale.
we get a well-placed nuclear device right here? Then we could avert the natural disaster. I've seen this in a movie.
Right? But we're playing the role of the victim still, though. Oh no! And then we come up with this idea that whatever you believe, the aliens are more intelligent than us. Right back to it. We're not equal to God. That's BS.
Yeah, we need a God.
We're not.
We don't believe in God anymore. We need a new God.
We're crazy. Like I'm not superior to my own children. Huh? How is that possible? I created them. Am I superior creation than they are? Absolutely not. So we're thinking weird anyway, and it's an inferiority complex that leads to, depression. You guys were talking about. It's like, yeah, man. Then it's like, bring the utopia on. But then we're victims also. I use the word victim of like having to get up tomorrow and go to work and the hustle and bustle and the feudal system. And yeah, man. Why only do certain people get the lion's share of
well, this is like a 3 or 4 part series.
Right now.
So maybe they should all be episode 7.
No, it should absolutely.
I think that we'll continue to call this episode 7. Well, the Electric View, Universal One's collaboration. Thank you for watching.